Hello Year 6 and welcome to today's English task. Now, we are going to be continuing to look at the story of Macbeth, which we started yesterday, and you are going to be writing in role as Macbeth. So I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. So what I want you to be doing is, firstly, if you've not listened to the start of Macbeth from yesterday's lesson, you need to do that. Okay, so go back to yesterday's video and do it. Even if you don't do the task, actually listen to the story. Then, listen to today's story, so I'm going to get into that in a minute. And then, like I said, you are going to be looking at information. You're going to be looking at writing your own diary entry, which we'll get to in a minute. Okay, let's go into my screen. Okay, so like I said, we are continuing to look at the story of Macbeth, which was originally written by William Shakespeare, but it's been rewritten by Andrew Matthews. Now, your task, as it says, you're going to be writing a diary entry in role as Macbeth after this next text. So what you need to do is you need to include as much information as you possibly can about Macbeth's feelings, and I want you to particularly put an effort into using Shakespearean words. I'll talk about how you can do that in a minute. You're going to write in first person, you're going to describe Macbeth's point of view, you're going to use words that would fit in with the story, and again I'll help you with that in a minute. Organise your work into paragraphs, and you're going to use a range of punctuation. So firstly, let's get into the text. So the bit that we left it at was where Lady Macbeth was telling Macbeth, you should kill him. If you kill him, all that stands in your way is his sons. And Macbeth at first was like, no, I don't want to do it. I really don't want to do it. But he was really tempted. Okay, so let's go into it. Long after the castle had fallen silent, Macbeth left his room and crept along the corridors. His hands trembled, and the sound of his pulse in his ears was like the beating of a battle drum. This is the hour of the wolf and the witch, he thought, when evil spirits roam the night. And as the words crossed his mind, a ghostly glow gathered in the darkness, shaping itself into a dagger that floated in the air. Shining with a sickly green light, Macbeth almost cried out in terror. Be calm, he told himself. This is a trick of the mind. To prove it, he reached out his hand to take the dagger, but it floated away from him and pointed the way to Duncan's floor. Blood began to ooze from the blade as though the iron was weeping red tears. A bell tolled midnight. Duncan's funeral bell is ringing, muttered Macbeth, and he followed the dagger through the gloom. Lady Macbeth also heard the bell, and it seemed a long time before her husband returned. There was blood on his hands and face, and he carried 2 daggers. You should not have brought the daggers here, said Lady Macbeth. Go, pack and put them into the guard's hands as we planned. Macbeth's eyes were blank. He shook his head. I will not go back there, he said hoarsely. Then I will, said Lady Macbeth, and snatched the daggers from Macbeth's hands and left the room. Macbeth stood where he was, shivering uncontrollably, seeing nothing but Duncan's dead eyes staring. He tried to pray, but his lips and tongue would not form the words. In a short while, Lady Macbeth came back, holding her red hands up to the candlelight. I smeared blood over the guards' faces to make them seem guilty, she said. In the morning, we will have them tortured until they say that Duncan's sons paid them to kill them. Her face was so full of triumph and cruelty that Macbeth no longer recognised it. He turned away and caught sight of his reflection in the mirror. It was as if he were looking at someone else, as if he and his wife had become strangers to themselves and to each other. And we're going to stop there. Now, back to your task. So, you are going to be writing this diary entry as Macbeth kind of after these events. So imagining that Duncan's dead, and so he's unclear about how it's happened. He just kind of thought that there was this dagger in the world, but then it suddenly ended up with 2 daggers and blood all over his hands. And then his wife has taken the daggers back to kind of make it look as though the guards have done it. So Macbeth's almost in like a bit of a trance kind of strange way. He doesn't understand what's going on. So we're going to be doing, and we're going to be writing in role as Macbeth. Now, to help us do that, there's a few things. What I want you to do first is to watch this little extract of this next part of the video. That is the words from the original play. Okay, just to give you an idea of the kind of how Macbeth spoke. Okay, so let's get into that.
If it were done, when 'tis done, then 'twere well it were done quickly. If the assassination could trammel up the consequence and catch with his surcease success, that but this blow might be the be-all and the end-all here, but here, upon this bank and shoal of time, we jump the life to come. But in these cases we still have judgment here, that we but teach bloody instructions which, being taught, return to plague the inventor. This even-handed justice commends the ingredients of our poisoned chalice to our own lips. He's here in double trust. First, as I am his kinsman and his subject, strong both against the deed, then as his host, who should against his murderer shut the door, not bear the knife myself. Besides this, Duncan hath borne his faculties so meek, been so clear in his great office, that his virtues will plead like angels, trumpet-tongued against the deep damnation of his taking off, and pity, like a naked newborn babe striding the blast, or heaven's cherubim horsed upon the sightless couriers of the air, shall blow the horrid deed in every eye. The tears shall drown the wind. I have no spur to prick the sides of my intent, but only vaulting ambition, which o'erleaps itself and falls on the other.
Now obviously there's a lot of stuff in that we won't necessarily understand. However, we want to try and make our diary entry as close to that kind of language as possible. So to help us do that, on your information sheet, there are these words. Okay, so you find something like this. And what I want you to do is try and include some of these as possible. So if you're having to say that something is handsome, call it brave. If you're having to say that there was distress or trouble, use the word coil. If you're going to say to go to sleep, then you could use the word couch. If something was difficult or hard to do, then you could use the word painful. Okay? So there's quite a long list of different words and phrases. Now I'm not looking for all of them at all, okay? But you might try and get in a few. If what he did was disgusting and hateful, rather than saying it was disgusting, use the word vile, okay? If he was taken on a task, say to undergo. So you're going to try and use as many of these as possible. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to write a little diary entry, but I'm not going to do it as Macbeth because you'd just be able to copy it. Instead, I'm going to do it as Lady Macbeth about the events of that night. So let's go to my hand and page. Okay, so let's get into writing this. Now, like I said, I'm going to be doing it from the point of view of Lady Macbeth and not Macbeth, but it's almost like a diary entry about the events of the day. So, success criteria is going to be down in this bottom corner to help me think about things that I need to include, and I'm going to be looking at that list of words from the information text to try and create some. Okay, so I'm Lady Macbeth. Today, my whole life has changed. In some people's eyes, what has happened today is vile. I must admit it was painful. But also necessary. Okay, I'm putting vile in there. That's one of the words off the list. Painful is on the list instead of using the word difficult. For too long. People have looked at me down their disgusting what's another word that I can use? Disgusting, judging noses. However, now they will have to look up at me whilst bowing down to their queen. My brave Macbeth. Almost could not go through with it. Could not go through with the slaying of the king. He was a quaking mess. Quaking's one of those words. He was a quaking mess, but using my cunning ability, my cunning skills, I convinced him of what must be done. Okay, I'm going to stop there because I've been writing for like 3.5, 4 minutes now. But hopefully you can see that if I look at the success criteria, I've started to tick off most of these things. So I've written in first person. I have described events from, well, I'm doing Lady Macbeth, but Lady Mac's point of view. I've started to get into that, but I've not really gone into it fully yet. I've used words that will fit with the rest of the story, so I've picked out some of those words like cunning and slaying and vile, painful. I've used some words off that list. I've started to use paragraphs to organise my work, and I've started to use some punctuation, although I've not got much of that in there. Right, quickly back to my face. So year 6, a lot to do today. I know this video has begun on a little bit, towards like 15 minutes, but work hard, okay? So you are writing from Macbeth's point of view, and you're writing a diary entry about what has happened today, about how he has killed King Duncan, and he's not feeling good about it, I don't think. He's probably going to blame his wife for it. So, looking forward to seeing your work. Goodbye, year 6.